If you're listening to two people talk about chess, they're probably going to say opening, middle game, and end game a lot. But what do those terms even mean, and why are they important? In addition, why should you care? That's what I'm going to be talking about here. The opening is essentially the beginning phase of the game, or the very first moves. The start of the opening is easy to figure out. It is just the very start of the game. But where does the opening end? There are a couple of ways to define this. Professionals will often say they are out of the opening once they reach a position that they haven't studied yet, which is often 10 to even 30 moves in. However, a more useful definition for the average player is that the opening ends when you have finished developing your pieces from their starting positions. As for why the opening is important, I have a whole video on this topic later on in the course. The main thing to remember is that you can follow opening rules or principles in the opening, but many of them don't make sense in the later game. As a result, it is important to recognize, hey, the opening is finished, I probably shouldn't focus as much on the opening rules I learned about anymore. The middle game is the phase right after the opening and right before the end game. If both you and your opponent have pieces developed, and most of them are still on the board or haven't been captured yet, you're in the middle game. A lot of chess games don't even reach the endgame, especially if one player is a much stronger player than the other. This is because they will use tactics and strategical ideas we talked about earlier in the course to get a big advantage before the game goes on too long. As a player, the middle game is the most complicated phase to play, but also the most fun. However, if players are evenly matched and neither can get a big advantage, the game often goes to the endgame, which we'll be talking about next. The endgame is the final phase of the game. It starts when each player has a king, one piece, and a bunch of pawns left, and ends when the game does. In the endgame, it is often very difficult to checkmate your opponent, just because there are so few pieces left to do it. As a result, the main goal of the endgame is to promote a pawn, or to have a pawn reach the other side of the board and change into another piece, usually a queen. It's also important to notice that you're in the endgame, because it means that it will be safe to bring your king out into the open. This is because it is just so much harder to checkmate it, and it is more useful to have your king out doing something rather than hiding. So that's about it. Although it is certainly possible to play a game of chess without knowing what the opening, middle, and end game are, knowing that these phrases exist and that there are different rules that can help you play each of them better will be very helpful. Thanks for watching, see you on the next one.